This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Gary, I'm back. I've been given a reprieve from last Sunday.
Yeah, I think we have to start with a apparently misattributed Mark Twain quote. Reports of your death have been grossly exaggerated.
But don't we have? There were quite a few comments that embraced the beginning of last week. But
Embraced?
I did not. What?
Embraced?
Well, I don't know. Embraced probably is not the right term. What would you say? Amplified?
I mean, I've been looking even more carefully over my shoulder in downtown LA. I'm afraid I'm about to get shanked. People did not like that intro. Jesus. I figured you laughed and that was the end of it. We played the clip on my podcast and all of my friends, I had several people that I'm close to in my life text me and ask me if I was okay.
One person in particular, which was the funniest in our text that you mentioned, was I thought hilarious.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a thread on Reddit that said that I was visibly crying at the top of the show, which I thought that was pretty funny. And then one of the commenters in that thread said that they speculated that I had been told that you have a terminal illness right before we started recording, and that's why I made the comment about bad news coming from you.
Right.
I just have to go ahead and put it out there, like, not to the best of my knowledge. I think that if someone went back with a fine-tooth comb and a specific listening ear, you would hear a lot of me giving shit to Mark on this podcast because, you know, Mark and I don't necessarily see each other every week. So it's not a complete aberration for me to go from reasonable doubt to reasonable doubt, you know, one full week without seeing Mark. So this is sometimes my only chance to talk to Mark. And every now and then, you know, I got to give him a little bit of the business.
What we affectionately call a forearm shiver.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yep, exactly. Comment of the week, though. Yeah. I think this is for real. Do you have it there?
Yeah, I'll read it here. I don't have the picture, but the comment of the week comes from someone whose YouTube username is Richard Carnow 8132, and he says that I met Mark on Saturday evening at the patio area of a restaurant on Foothill Boulevard near ACH in La Cañada, and I think that'll get him some merch once we get our restocking.
There was somebody else who said Subway, and I was not in a Subway. And what did you interpret as ACH?
You know, I got to be honest. I thought about it for a second. I couldn't really figure it out. I didn't put too much thought into it. Well, what is ACH?
My immediate reaction was Adam Carolla's house.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that could be true. I mean, I think that's Shohei Ohtani's house now, but, you know, who's counting?
And I think he sell it as well?
He announced he was going to. I don't know if it's gone through yet, but apparently the Japanese press is not exactly cool with privacy. So they've been showing up, and that house is, you know, just kind of in a normal neighborhood. It's not a gated community. And I think that he's realized as a result that he needs to be in a little bit more seclusion.
Not that he needs it, but I think he got a hell of a deal from Adam on that house, the price wise. And I'm going to venture to say that when he sells it this time, he may make a tiny profit never having moved in there. But
yeah, I mean, not
that he needs it.
Yeah, I'm not sure he needs a tidy profit, especially given the tax evasion that he's purportedly going through by deferring.
You call that tax deferral.
Deferral. Okay, excuse me. Tax deferral by deferring, you know, what is it, $700 million worth of his salary until he moves out of the country. But hey, man, you know, use the rules the way you can. I'm not hating on him.
Yeah, it's wild. It's been a wild week too. I mean, I go back and forth on what cases to talk about this week. I mean, I'll give you kind of the ones that immediately come to mind for me. Jack Smith with a superseding indictment in D.C. in front of Judge Chuckin. By the way, in the face of him, and we talked about this, asking for more time on the evidentiary hearing, I thought maybe he was complying with DOJ rules about the 60-day or the 90-day rule not affecting the election. And instead, what he has done is kind of the standard operating procedure for U.S. attorneys. When in doubt, supersede. And I saw an interesting clip last night with my friend Danny Savalos. You know why Gary's laughing, everybody, if you're watching here? Because I asked Gary if he had any video. And I said, okay, Gary, then it's free form for you. Danny Savalos was on with Eamon on MSNBC. And he was asked about the superseding indictment. And I thought Savalos gave a very cogent and responsive analysis from a criminal defense lawyer perspective. And namely, what were we going to say? Gary?
Nope. I'm sorry. I thought you were pausing.
Mainly, it was normally when you're on the receiving end of a superseding indictment, receiving end meaning the criminal lawyer, usually it expands the indictment. It adds either another person or another additional counts. A lot of times you'll see in wire fraud cases, for instance, that a superseding indictment will then add money laundering because there's higher sentencing guidelines and things of that nature. And so usually a superseding indictment is a signal that some kind of plea negotiations have broken down, or that the prosecutor wants to increase the level of pressure on it. This is quite the contrary, and not surprisingly, comes on the heels of the Supreme Court ruling on the immunity, and that Donald Trump, as the president, could not be indicted or prosecuted on acts that were in his official capacity. So basically what has happened is this superseding indictment has, if you're from the prosecutor's standpoint, I'm going to argue, has streamlined the indictment to the point where they're going to make the argument, I would guess. And by the way, it's, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this Thursday is the hearing. Here you go, Gary.
So, Danny, I know you believe this was sort of smart legal strategy here by Smith and his team, but walk us through what happens next. What are the subsequent steps that are going to occur along this, what has become a very slow legal journey?
Normally, a superseding indictment, Jonathan, is something that strikes fear into the heart of a criminal defense attorney like me. It usually means the government has found either more defendants or more bad evidence, and they're charging more crimes. That's the key. It's rare that you have a superseding indictment that actually reduces information. And a lot of people are calling this pared down or a slimmed down version of the indictment. Not to me. Ultimately, the only thing I care about is the counts, and all 4 counts remain. That means if the defendant is convicted, the sentencing guidelines will be exactly the same. All Jack Smith's team has done is taken a look at the indictment and said, what should we remove that insulates us? And yes, they remove references to Trump's attempts to subvert the DOJ and maybe install a new acting attorney general. But they keep in language about Vice President Pence, which signals to me that Jack Smith's team is feeling very confident. They've kept all 4 counts, and they're keeping in conduct. And the Mike Pence conduct is significant because the Supreme Court suggested that this at least was entitled to the presumption of immunity. So Jack Smith is signaling that even conduct that may be entitled to a presumption of immunity, it is full steam ahead. They are not afraid of the district court and any possible hearing. They are going forward with these counts. So as much as, yes, this indictment has been, I guess, reduced in length, everything that matters is still in it. This is a strategic, I think, a very brilliant move to keep this indictment alive, to head off any problems at the pass before Judge Chutkan has to hold a hearing, making, I think, her job even easier.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I would either amplify or modify with that, but that's I think, a brilliant analysis of what was going on. This is kind of a chess game, and the chess game here, the move by Smith is we're not gonna get mired down in all of the Department of Justice machinations. However, I would add, the fact that they leave in Pence leads me to believe that they not only have Pence's cooperation, which I think has been reported, but that they feel like Pence is going to testify clearly, I think, that none of this stuff was in an official capacity, and that he did the deep dive on the analysis and believes and had told Trump various things. I'm not so sure that, I think the district court judge will based on the ruling so far, is going to say, yeah, that's okay. I'm not so sure that the U.S. Supreme Court, because this is going to go back in front of the U.S. Supreme Court one way or another, clearly. And I'm not so sure they're going to buy that. I think they're going to say, look, you've already basically conceded that DOJ issues and the acting attorney general are off the table. There's no way you can proceed with Pence, who is his vice president.
Yeah, I think that's a very astute legal analysis. I am really just having trouble grappling with the fact that I was able to find that clip, on a moment's notice.
Well, don't pat yourself too hard on the back, because that was not the Amon clip. That was the Morning Joe clip. But
it got the Savalas analysis. Let's calm down here.
Okay, but what it does tell me is that Danny's got his talking points, because his Amon clip that I saw, which I just mentioned, has the same couple of sentences that this one does as well. So,
okay. So don't pat don't pat yourself on the back too hard, but you got exactly the analysis that I wanted in a moment's notice, even though we agreed before we started that we didn't have any video. Okay. Got it. Yeah. I'll make sure not to bruise my back.
I'm going to raise the bar here a little bit. Let's move on to another case, which is as an outgrowth of the Karen Reed case. And we talked about this.
Sandra Birchmore.
Very good.
Look. Oh, God, the bruise is going to be fucking something else.
How are you going to get to the office tomorrow if you're, or
I don't know. I may not have enough money to put in my gas tank.
You want to give them the summary of the Birchmore case and how it relates to Karen Reed?
Sure. It relates to Karen Reed in that the federal authorities should come over and come in and take over the Greater Boston Area Police Department about yesterday. Sandra Birchmore is a woman who has since passed and was found to be a suicide and has since in an indictment been alleged to have been murdered. When she was 13 years old, she joined the Explorers program of a Staunton, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Massachusetts.
Your friend Michelle McPhee will slap you if you're wrong. So,
well, Michelle McPhee just slaps me for fun, but that's just a different story altogether. But this person joined the Explorers program, a local police department in the Greater Boston area, when she was 13 years old. And one of the instructors in that program, who has since gone on to become a officer and then detective in the department, started a relationship with her, offered to tutor her, etc. And since that.
By the way, can you take a time out? Can you imagine if Adam was here listening to this, when you started talking about the Explorer program for police departments, where he would go with that as an outgrowth of his, I always worry about the fathers who volunteer to go take the kids on an outing shtick.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, because the Explorers program is founded and sponsored by Scouting America, which is an offshoot of the Boy Scouts. And that was always Adam's joke, was that, if it's time for a camp out, whoever in the father group of the Boy Scout community puts their hand up first and says that they want to supervise the camp out, that person needs to be investigated. And the guy in the corner who's got his head down and saying, fuck no, like that's the person that should be taking them all, because
there is first of all, it's a new definition of Corolla probable cause, number one. But number two, it also is kind of, it's a first cousin of a jury selection. I'm always worried about jurors who are too anxious to get onto a jury, as opposed to the one who's trying desperately to get out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people need to be concerned about your jury selection protocol now that you're taking advice from me. But we'll set that aside. So Sandra Birchmore becomes an explorer, and then this officer, who is in his mid to late 20s at the time that she's 13, starts a relationship with her, starts grooming her based on allegations, and allegedly And now Mark's gone and it's just me doing this. That's interesting. Okay, he's still here, but his video was off for a moment, so forgive me for that. He starts a sexual relationship with her based on allegations when she was 15, continues it for quite a while, and the more you read this case, the sicker it gets, because apparently his twin brother also had a sexual relationship with her, including also their supervisor in the Explorers program, who was a much older police officer. And without going further, there are more disturbing details. And apparently,
and the connection to Karen Reed is, we suspect, and I believe it's being reported, that much of Alan Jackson, who was the attorney from Los Angeles who defended Karen Reed, much of the material he used in the defense of her at the trial number 1, which, by the way, I don't think there'll ever be a trial number 2 with her as a defendant. There may be a trial number 2 with some others as defendants, but not with her as a defendant. I think much of what he had was either developed or as a result of this investigation, the wiretaps, the experts that were called in the defense case. All of those were either DOJ related or DOJ generated material that ended up showing that there was something hinky going on in the Karen Reed case. And still amazing to me that jury hung, because clearly, as the defense has said, they couldn't have gotten to the part of the case involving the manslaughter of the running over unless they had already acquitted of the greater counts, which for some reason nobody ever inquired of the jury before they were disbanded.
Right. And for those who may be new listeners or maybe just are on and off listeners, Karen Reed, that was the case where a woman who was dating a Boston police officer allegedly went out drinking with a few people and dropped a police officer off at his home, and then maybe hit him with her car as she was leaving, and then he died. That case was fraught with misconduct and, police involvement, and ultimately the jury hung and she was not convicted.
Right, not convicted. And now the state of Massachusetts, which is the prosecutorial authority, has announced they're going to retry it. It's too bad you can't bet on things like that, because I would put some big money down that the state authorities are not going to be able to retry that case, especially given what we've seen subsequent to that with the federal indictment here. And circling back, and let's end on this, the point you made about the feds coming in and taking over the police department. I've seen that in a number of cases. I mean, obviously living here in LA, you've seen it with LAPD. There was a case we had, you'll remember, Gary, of that woman in Utah where basically they disbanded the drug unit after we had discovered and done some discovery there. There has been the Shaver case with Mesa Police Department, where the feds have not taken over but were investigating there. And there's been some other famous and notorious cases where the feds come in and either with a consent decree or literally take over. I mean, it's hard to imagine in this case that the feds are not going to take some drastic action. They cannot just leave this to proceed as business as usual.
All right, Mark. Well, 2 corrections. 1 is that Massachusetts is a commonwealth, so, there's that. And 2 is that you're very lucky that Adam Carolla is not on this show, because if you just brought up Daniel Shaver, we would have 25 more minutes going, as he just absolutely lost his mind on the injustice in that case. But since he's not, we can go ahead and end there, because I can see that you're in the office. So you clearly have some work to do on this holiday weekend.
I've got over the shoulder right here.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit off air about some topics that you wanted to do on air, but we'll go ahead and leave those for another week. Mark, thank you so much for your time and making a little room on a holiday weekend. We appreciate it, and I'm sure the audience does as well.
Thanks, Gary. It's always good to see you, and I'll try to get my blood work done tomorrow or Tuesday.
Well, yeah, we got to have you in good health, because certainly the audience does not like my brand of humor. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Gary.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.